Hi, everyone. I'm Jenna Paone. Welcome to A Mighty Blazes Celebrity Conversations. I'm so thrilled today that we are here to celebrate Amy Poeppel's awesome new book, Musical Chairs, with Fiona Davis here to have a wonderful conversation with her. Welcome, ladies. How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me and us.
Yes, thank you so much for being here, and thank you all for joining us and for bearing with us. I had a computer emergency right before we went live and had to switch computers, which was a whole fun thing, but we're here, we're gonna do this, we're so excited. I'm thrilled to have both of these incredibly skilled and talented women here with me today. And I'm gonna introduce them real fast, and then we're gonna get on to the interview. So first up, we have our celebrity interviewer of the day. We have Fiona Davis joining us. Fiona Davis is the nationally best-selling author of The Dollhouse, The Chelsea Girls, The Masterpiece, and other works of historical fiction that celebrate the mysterious and glamorous past and present of New York City. Fiona began her career in New York City as an actress, where she worked on Broadway, off Broadway, and in regional theater. After getting a master's degree at Columbia Journalism School, she fell in love with writing, leapfrogging from editor to freelance journalist before finally settling down as an author of historical fiction. Fiona's books have been translated into more than a dozen languages. She's a graduate of the College of William and Mary and is based in New York City. Her upcoming release, The Lions of Fifth Avenue, which hits bookshelves on August 4th. Can we see that beautiful cover? Yeah, it's in the back. We love it. We love it. Yeah. Revolves around a series of book thefts that roil the iconic New York Public Library, leaving two generations of strong-willed women to pick up the pieces. It is a library reads pick for August, one of the New York Post's best summer books, and a she reads pick for best historical fiction in 2020. Publishers Weekly calls The Lions of Fifth Avenue a delightful mystery. The characters and story are stellar, and the real star is the library, which Davis evokes beautifully. And New York Times bestselling author Adriana Trigiani writes, the magnificent Fiona Davis has written a page-turner for book lovers everywhere. This is a story of family ties, their lost dreams, and the redemption that comes from discovering truth. Thank you so much for being
That's impressive. Wow.
Oh, that's the really embarrassing part where I sit here and praise you for like 20 minutes. And get ready, Amy, because you're up next.
Yeah.
The star of the show today, Amy Poeppel, author of the new book, that everyone is talking about. I see this everywhere, Musical Chairs. I'm so thrilled for this book. Amy Poeppel is the author of Limelight, Small Admissions, and her latest novel, Musical Chairs. She grew up in Dallas, Texas, graduated from Wellesley College, and worked as an actress in the Boston area. There's a commonality. We're going to talk about that later. Appearing in a corporate industrial for Polaroid, a commercial for Brooks Pharmacy, and a truly terrible episode of America's Most Wanted, along with other TV spots and several plays. While in Boston, she also got her MA in teaching from Simmons College. She is married to David Poeppel, a neuroscientist at NYU and director of the Max Planck Institute in Frankfurt. For the past 30 years, they have lived in many cities, including San Francisco, Berlin, and New York, and had 3 sons along the way. Amy taught high school English in the Washington, D.C. suburbs, and after moving to New York, she worked as an assistant director of admissions at an independent school where she had the fulfilling experience of meeting and getting to know hundreds of applicant families, and probably got some inspiration for that book of yours, Small Admissions, I'm just assuming. Amy attended sessions at the Actors Studio Playwrights Directors Unit and wrote the theatrical version of Small Admissions, which was performed there as a staged reading in 2011. Amy's writing has appeared in the New York Times, The Rumpus, Working Mother, Points and Case, The Belladonna, and Literary Mama. You can read an interview with Amy on Author's Answer. Amy's new release, Musical Chairs, is a hilarious and heartfelt new novel about a perfectly imperfect summer of love, secrets, and second chances. With her trademark humor, pitch-perfect voice, and sly perspective on the human heart, Amy Poeppel crafts a love letter to modern family life with all of its discord and harmony. In the tradition of novels by Maria Semple and Stephen Macaulay, Musical Chairs is an irresistibly romantic story of role reversals, reinvention, and sweet synchronicity. In a starred review, Kirkus Reviews says, Poeppel has created a story that is well thought out, well plotted, well written, and fully developed. a delightful novel that celebrates the messiness and joy to be found in real life. Congratulations, Amy, and welcome.
Thanks.
You, you both are so amazing, and you have such rich histories in the arts, and you're so multi-talented, and your creativity manifests in so many different ways. I'm so thrilled for this conversation. Without further ado, let's get going. Fiona, take it away, and let's celebrate Amy's musical chairs.
Oh, thank you. Well, I feel like we've really covered everything at this point, so. So thank you so much, Jenna, for this opportunity, and really thank you to A Mighty Blaze for we were just talking about it earlier, really galvanizing the book community in a time of such crisis and providing these opportunities for authors with books coming out to be heard and meet readers. So we're thrilled. And Amy, congratulations on the publication of your book.
Thank you. Thank you.
First of all, this book got a starred review in Kirkus, which is notoriously known for giving very difficult reviews, and starred ones are very uncommon. So what was your thought when you first got that, when you learned that?
Well, I was pretty happy because small admissions didn't do so well with Kirkus at all. And Limelight didn't get a Kirkus review at all, if I'm remembering correctly. So this sort of was like, whoa, we've gone from one end of the spectrum to the other. So yeah, no, I was thrilled. It's always weird, you get so close to this thing that you do that at some point you turn it in and you have no idea what it is anymore. Like, I just think you get so close to your own stuff that it's hard to know. So I was delighted, surprised, thrilled. It's a lot of work that goes into this. So it's always nice to know that it's hitting someone the right way. And whenever I hear the word mess in a review, I'm like, they got it.
It's just a wonderful book. There's so much to it. There's art, there's family, there's love. There's, a couple plot twists that I didn't expect. And it's really all about this group. Actually, tell us what it's about. Give us your elevator pitch.
I've never been very good at the elevator pitch, but
That's awful, but let's hear it.
2/3 of a piano trio, a classical piano trio. And it's really a book that centers on the relationship and friendship between Bridget and Will. And Bridget is going off to her dilapidated summer house for the entire summer. It's really a weekend house that she's neglected over the years. And her plan is to go and spend a lovely, relaxing summer there with her boyfriend. And the whole plan, as plans often do, gets completely turned on its head. And she ends up with her adult children moving back home and her almost 90-year-old father announcing his engagement. So, and she sort of thought maybe it was her turn to be announcing an engagement. And that just kind of, yeah. So it's just, it's a family, it's everyone's relationship sort of getting re-examined in a new way. And it's definitely a humorous look at life for women my age.
And I love you use a phrase, as everyone's descending on this home, that you use the phrase that it becomes a sweet chaos. And I just thought that was so perfect. And what's interesting about this book is it's about everyone coming home, the adult children coming home, and the conflicts and joys of that. And so, of course, a lot of people are experiencing that with quarantine and COVID. And as that started developing, what went through your mind?
What really was shocking to me is when this all started, and I thought I should go and spend an extended period at my dilapidated weekend house. And then one child said, well, if school is all online, I think I'd rather be out in Connecticut with you guys. So he came out. And then the next one said, well, my school's online too. I think I'll come out to Connecticut. And what's for dinner? And then the third one said, it's getting really bad here in New York. I think maybe I should come out to Connecticut. So the next thing I knew, I had all three of my children back home again. And it was not something, I wasn't quite an empty nester yet, but I was really getting close. So yeah, sweet chaos is is actually exactly the way I would describe the last 3 months of my life. I think a lot of people feel that way. Sweet, sometimes not so sweet, but for the most part, kind of lovely, unexpected, odd, terrifying chaos where you don't know how long is this going on and when is this going to end and what are we doing? I don't know how many times I've woken up in the last few months just saying, what are we doing? Where is this headed? So it's just been fun to kind of feel like I've stepped into my main character's shoes. And, you know, I mean, it's just been a funny thing that has come out of this entire quarantine. Very unexpected.
And I love the idea that in the book, the house really parallels the inner lives of Bridget and the characters. And you write that the home reflects the bumps and bruises that represented a full, well-lived life, meaning that the screen's falling out and all the problems with the house. And is this house based in the house that you went to?
Yes. So there are two houses in the book, but the house that you're talking about is definitely very much like my house. I'm not there often up until quarantine happened. Not there very often. So every single time I get there, something new has broken since the last time I was there. I'll get there and a tree is in the middle of the driveway that isn't supposed to be there. Or I'll walk in and there's just a puddle of water on the floor and there's this investigation of where did it come from? It's not supposed to be here. And the heating goes out and just something, every time I'm there, there's some new broken thing. And while it's frustrating, I also think it's kind of hilarious. I mean, there is something funny about not being able to keep up with the adulting that you feel you should be able to do when you're very much an adult. Mm-hmm. So that was definitely in my mind. We have these lovely, lovely friends who invite us to their house from time to time. And every time I go there, I'm just like, okay, this is how grownups are supposed to live. Ridiculously beautiful house. You go up this, you drive up this road and the gates open and you pull up into this big, beautifully manicured gravel courtyard. It's just the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. And everything is in place and there are fresh flowers on every table it's just so put together. So when I was trying to think of what Bridget's father's house could be like, I immediately started thinking of my friend's house. And I was so happy for every invitation I'd ever gotten to go there because I always feel I love being invited there, and the people who own the house are my friends and they're the most wonderful hosts in the world. But I also feel really bad about myself because every time I go there, I'm like, okay, their light bulbs are all working and they're just, everything works in this house. Why does nothing work in my house? Nothing works. So anyway, I just like this idea of having these two different houses. And yes, Fiona, what you were saying is definitely true. Through the course of the book, the house sort of gets its act together in the same way that a lot of the people are getting their act together. And that was kind of fun in terms of the pacing of everything, to sort of get the house and the people moving forward at the same pace. That was kind of fun.
Yeah, the houses are definitely another character in the book. And speaking of that, there's so many characters you have in various kind of, they form groups and then they break off and then there's another group. How was that? I was thinking it's almost like composing a symphony, the way you did it. And there's a lot of musical themes in the book. How did you manage all these people? And you know, having been on stage, had kind of stage directing people, did that help in the process?
I mean, I think if I were to write a play at some point, it would be with a cast of like 30. And of course, they really advise you not to do that because that's very expensive to write a play with, 40 characters in it. But the great thing about writing a novel is you can really populate your book with lots and lots of people. And I loved the idea of starting Bridget out at the beginning of the book by herself, just by herself. And then just adding people in and just sort of adding to the chaos. And I sort of go back to this at the very end of the book when Edward gives his big toast at the wedding, spoiler, sorry. And he talks about those old country British dances where you have this multitude of people and they all seem to know which way to move. And suddenly you have a partner and then somebody spins and turns and then you have this new partner and you just have to kind of keep up with the dance. And that's how I felt when I was writing the book. Mm-hmm. Speaking of sweet chaos, like I felt like the characters were all sort of arranging and rearranging themselves in this very chaotic, but hopefully very sweet way. They're all good people. They all play a role. I felt like I didn't add anybody in that I didn't really want to be there, So it was fun, and it was sort of like a symphony. It is sort of like you imagine, and I only know this because my son composes music, but when he gets these big sheets of of score paper, and he writes the instruments down in a list, and then they each have their path. And it's kind of like fiction writing, you know, it's very similar. And you start them all, you say go, and they all play their part at the same time. But sometimes you'll hit a point, you're like, that's not right. Those two notes can't be hit at the same time. And you have to sort of start over again. And I think a lot of fiction writing is very much like that, for it to come out sounding the way that you want it to.
That's exactly
that way with your threads. You always have two storylines, and you've got to get things paced and happening at the same time.
Yeah, that's a wonderful analogy for it. And speaking of the music in the book, it is about a trio. And so what kind of musical background did you have? Because music is such a huge part of it, and you describe classical music so beautifully. How did you come about that?
I'll tell you, the really hilarious thing is seriously right next to me. I could turn my computer, but I'm afraid there's a cello literally in arm's reach from me right here.
Of course
there is. Simply because my youngest son, who's very musical, at some point wanted to learn how to play cello as well. So we have a cello. I'm surrounded by music all the time because all three of my kids and my husband are very musical. I am the audience member. I do not play. I do not, I just found my childhood recorder when I was cleaning out my dad's house recently. I think I got as far as hot cross buns, and that was the extent of my musical talent. That was it. But I was thinking, you know, my son's 26, my oldest, and my youngest is 20. And especially for my youngest, because he's really, really in the classical music world, I've been carting this kid to music lessons, to recitals, to rehearsals, to lessons for the last, 15 years. And I do think I've somehow not internalized any of the musicality or the talent or the skill or even the ear. I wish I could tell you I've really developed this great ear for music. None of those things are true. But I certainly am an appreciator, and I have so much respect for the life of these musicians and for the work of these musicians and for the joy that their job gives them and the joy that they get in their community. And when I was trying to think what world I wanted to set these people in, it just sort of came to me. And I remember at some point somebody said, wouldn't jazz be more fun? And I don't have that connection. I love jazz, but I didn't feel that that was a world I was even comfortable writing about. But the classical music world, I felt, in spite of my complete inability to read music, carry a tune, any of that, I just feel connected to it in a way because of my kids. Plus, I had this resource of this kid in my house, of Luke, who I can just constantly ask questions. Like, what are they listening to at dinner? Like, what piece of music would they want to play next? What would be a challenge? What would be something that they would think is sort of cheesy? Like what? And it was so great to have somebody in my house that I could talk to. And
that is such that's a reason to have children right there.
Yeah, and just get them doing weird things, get them to learn how to do new skills that you don't have, and then you can tap into that. Yeah, no, that was really, I was very, very grateful to him. He's been really patient with me. Marcia Butler also helped me a great deal, because while my son is great at the musicology side of things and understanding theory and some of the things that Will would be thinking about in terms of arranging music and stuff like that, Marcia was the one who told me about the life, about the schedule, about the rehearsals, about how often they're on tour, what they're making, and just what the commercial side of that would look like. So she was very, very helpful with all of that as well.
I learned so much, and it felt like it was embedded really beautifully. So we were never, there was never too much information. It was enough to inform the scene and inform the character, which is difficult to do. And speaking of family, you did a book trailer for your book that your family took part in. And I highly recommend, where's the best place to find it? On your website?
Just go to YouTube and
yeah,
in the search bar, just put in Amy Poeppel musical chairs and it will come up. I just, it's the same way that with these wonderful people at A Mighty Blaze, everyone sort of got together and thought, what can we do? What can we do in this weird time? And I don't know, it was around 2 months ago, sort of had that same panic about this book coming out. What can I do? And like Fiona, I love scripts. I love plays. I love thinking of, and I thought, if I do something that's just 90 seconds, how can I give it a quick little arc? How can I tell something about the book, talk a little bit about myself in terms of where my life kind of feeds this book. And yes, we did this really fun 90-second spot. You can find it on YouTube. It was very bonding. We had a great time making it. We did the entire thing twice. We did a rough draft, and then we came back and did the real thing.
I highly recommend it. There's a moment in there, a sporty moment, that makes me laugh every time I watch it. And speaking of kind of quirky characters, there's a character, Juliet, in your book, and she has this really particular health program where she's on a diet where you have to move while you're eating and you're not allowed to use utensils. And it was just so ridiculous, but perfectly believable. How did you come up with that? And tell us a little more about that.
Well, I had heard somewhere, and I don't know where I heard this, that we should go back to our nomadic ways, because we were walking all the time. And what we do now is we sit all day long. They say sitting is the new smoking. Yeah. And that what we do is we sit all day, and then we go do a burst of like, some of us, I don't always, but that what some of us do is we go on like a 45-minute power walk or a 45-minute run. But that's not really that great for you, because the whole rest of the day, you're just sitting somewhere working at your laptop, whatever. I mean, I do it way too much. So I just thought, sort of, what if we wanted to just completely turn that on its head, and you're just supposed to walk all the time. Don't sit down while you eat. I just thought that would be actually, and maybe we should try that. I don't know.
It was just so funny because, there's so many trends today, and you made up one that was just so ridiculous, but again, completely believable. Like, I expect it to show up in the New York Times.
I think it would work.
Yeah.
My next
treadmill desks, like the treadmill desk, and then you can put your plate there too.
Exactly. And you shouldn't need utensils, I thought, because nothing that you're eating should have like dressing or sauce, or it should be just like a carrot. Why would you need a fork to eat a carrot? So you should look at that as all of your food. All of your food should be things that you can just pick up. That's so depressing. I mean, that's really depressing to think of eating nothing but raw vegetables all the time. But I kind of am at that quarantine phase where I'm ready for someone to just put me on a program.
CARES program.
Yeah, a lot of this book was wish fulfillment. My books are often wish fulfillment, and this book was no exception. The idea of sort of someone ending up in my life who can whip my house into shape, and then someone else ending up in my life who can like whip me into shape. Like where are these people? I want these people in my life.
You wrote them. In the book, it's really an ode not only to this house up in Connecticut, but also to Greenwich Village in a way, and about how it changes over time, and one of the characters is having a really tough time surviving in the village, which again is so reflective of what's going on today. And I know you've lived in the village for a long time. How did that inform your experience in writing it?
Well, mostly, so I moved here about 12 years ago, and people always said to me when I moved here, oh, you should have been here before crime was high, but rents were low. Why didn't you live here back in the 80s and in the 70s when it was like the real Greenwich Village? So part of me has always felt like I live in the fake Greenwich Village. Like I live in this new Greenwich Village. But even in my years here, places bakeries have closed, restaurants have closed, people move out. It's just gotten so crazy. I am here in NYU faculty housing, which means I kind of cheated my way into Greenwich Village. I'm living in a neighborhood that I otherwise couldn't afford because it's faculty housing, which is just, it's the greatest thing in the world. But meanwhile, I'm living in a neighborhood that I couldn't afford. I mean, this neighborhood has gotten completely crazy. So I have my main character, Will, one of the two main characters. He's kind of found his way, the way I have. He's kind of found his way that he can make this work. And it just barely works, but it works until it doesn't. And I'm just seeing that happen all over here. They're raising rents so high that little mom and pop shops cannot stay open. People have to move out of their apartments, and it's just frustrating because it's not that nice. Like, why is it so expensive? I think for most of us I wasn't born and raised in New York, and I love it here. I absolutely love it. The rents make no sense to me whatsoever. Like, I just don't understand. So I just felt like Will could be somebody who was kind of grandfathered in. He kind of snuck by this whole time sort of undetected as just a musician with not a lot of money living in like one of the greatest neighborhoods, until he gets found out, like until his cover is kind of blown. And then he suddenly is realizing like he can't afford his own life. And that's a sad thing to discover at 55 years old, 54 years old.
I think a lot of people who come to the city as artists or dancers or actors, that happens so often.
Yeah. I can't remember who wrote that amazing article a few years ago. She was living on like Riverside Drive. Do you remember this? It really sort of took the world by storm for a while, but it was an article about a woman who lived here and could barely afford her life here. And she just, her credit card debt got super blown up, and she finally left the city. She was like, I am beat. New York has chewed me up and spit me out. And I think that's how some people feel. And then yet it's like the most wonderful place in the world. I've never known a city that I've loved and hated so much in my life. You know?
That sums it up. Yes.
Yeah.
And both of us kind of came to writing later in life after doing other things. And can you talk a little bit about that and how that informed you and kind of what that path was?
Yes. So I, like Fiona, I did a bit of acting. I have a feeling though that my acting career was not as reputable as yours. Not that I was doing like disreputable things, but I'm just saying I was doing just kind of bad. I was in the Boston area and I was doing just commercial work and fun. The stage stuff was fun. Yeah. But I literally did a corporate industrial for Polaroid. This is going to date me because Polaroid made this play to real estate agents saying, we have got the greatest thing. Use Polaroids. Take a picture of the house you're listing. And the whole industrial was like, you took the realtor took a picture of the house and then put it in an envelope and addressed it to like people who might want to buy a house. Put the stamp on the end. This was so before the internet is what I'm trying to say. No internet. So it was like how to use Polaroid to sell real estate. It was absolutely hilarious. And I think I was shopping for a home in that or something, but I just did silly things like that and I was not terribly successful. But I loved theater. I never got that part of it. I was never cured of any of that. But I went on to do other things. I raised 3 kids. I was a high school English teacher, so that made sense for me because I love literature. I love reading. So to teach books to kids was like the classroom management, speaking of mess, I was not particularly good at wrangling 32.
Sweet chaos.
Not sweet, like hideous chaos, like really tough. I was very intimidated by the classroom management. My former teacher colleagues can attest to this. But I loved the teaching part. I loved the literature. So that all worked out well. And then when we moved to New York and I was looking for work, I ended up working in this admissions department and did that for a little while and thought I would go back to teaching. But then I started writing this play about the admissions world in New York City. And that's sort of where the writing thing finally, like I had written a book before that was never published. It was a very Southern book that I wrote. And it just didn't, what do you say? It didn't have legs? What do you say? It didn't have what it needed. So I never went anywhere with that one. But I wrote this play and my agent said that I'm not going to even try to sell that first weird book that you wrote, but couldn't you turn this play into a book? And so that's what I did. And I love that, Fiona, I love that we get to talk about theater and stuff because it's just something that I think we're both missing a lot right now.
Mm-hmm. It's so great. I actually want to ask you both about that a little bit because my background is in theater as well. I started out on the performing side and have done, I always say I'm a jack of all artistic trades because I've worked in my life as a dancer, an actor, a musician for many years, a songwriter. When you're in the arts, you're in the arts, right? And that the performing arts, people don't necessarily always think of it translating to the page, but I think coming from a background in theater, especially character work, really sets you up to write characters well. And I'd love to hear a little bit from both of you about the difference, how that process is, whether you approach books through character and how you do that, and whether, that the process of how that's different of creating a character on a page versus looking at a character on a page and creating it physically. I'd love to hear you both talk a little bit about that. So maybe Amy, we can start with you.
Oh,
Do you
let's start with Fiona, because I'm
Okay.
dying to hear I'm so curious to hear what Fiona, how your theater has sort of worked its way into your books.
It's probably so similar to the way it did for you, where you read a lot of plays, so you know what dialogue looks like, and you know that are things are going on in between the lines, and that as an actor, that's what you have to figure out. Because sometimes the lines are not what the character is thinking. It's a lie, you know, it's a diversion. And so really figuring out what that inner life is. And I guess that helps because there's two things going on in every scene, where it's what the character's thinking and then what's going on and what they're saying. So maybe it helped that way. And, you know, seriously, sometimes I'll be thinking about a character and she's worried or fearful or something like that. And I'll go back to kind of the method acting thing of thinking, okay, you know, what's going on in my body? What, you know, what would make me fearful? And so you kind of substitute and get it going that way. I don't know if it helps or not, but I definitely start with character to answer your question, Jenna. Character is that propels the story forward, and that's where I always start. How about you, Amy?
I think actually, Fiona, that your books would do so well on stage, because it would be so cool to have the same set for the two storylines.
Yes.
But
Oh,
one, so
that
for
would be
example,
really
with the Dakota, with the address, the building, the Dakota, to take an apartment and have it in its original state,
Yep.
and then flash forward to all the changes that they made.
Oh, that would be so
to the
cool.
paneling and to the floors and the moldings on the ceilings, and I think that could be so cool. Just saying.
Will you write it?
Yes.
Okay, we're in. I want you to write that. That would be amazing. I don't think I could write a play, but I would.
How cool would
that would be amazing.
That would be a great set. It'd be like a twisted like plaza suite in the, you know, in the sense of like you have, you know, the same room 3 times, but like I love that with the changes. Now, oh gosh, this is also great. I love, do you block out your scenes? Like, do you find yourself thinking like, cause I often find myself thinking, okay, and like, then she's moving like here, like I see it very visually. Amy, when you look at a scene, do you kind of take it apart physically like that? And
I definitely do what Fiona was saying earlier. It's sort of two different things. It's sort of what's the character, or what's the actor needing to tap into, and so what is my character needing to tap into? But then also, yes, blocking the scene. Like this is something that's hard for me, because I do think almost exclusively in dialogue. And I love writing these sort of big scenes with like lots of people around a table or on a porch or something. And that's so much fun for me. But then, you know, the blocking, who's where, and that's all great on stage, but how your reader is not watching this. So you have to tell them, as Fiona was saying, you not only have to tell them what the actors are saying, but you have to do the work for the actor too, because you have to then fill in all the gaps. And it's hard for me. It's something that I sort of have to fight myself over, because I resist dialogue tags. Like I don't want to use them any more than I absolutely have to. But you can't confuse your reader, or that's really annoying to confuse your reader. So they have to know who's talking. But I do try to use as few dialogue tags as I can. And yes, I love sort of the blocking scenes. And Fiona, I don't know if this happens with you, but you know, you move 3 people and then you have this person say something and they're in the kitchen.
Yeah. Or I've done a dinner party where I had 2 people sitting in the same chair.
Yes.
Like on top of each other, I guess. Yeah.
Ladies, by the way, an update on the conversation that's going around. There is a lot of consensus that The Address should definitely be a play written by Amy, and I think everybody's on board. So we just need a couple of producers. This will be fine. We're gonna.
I got to tell you, here's my pitch to the producers. It's really one set. We have to make changes to that set, but we can do this on a budget. I'm telling you, I can make this work on a very good budget.
I love it.
So great.
I'm in.
Oh, this is such a wonderful discussion. I love this. Sorry, I'm reading the conversation as it's going. I
was actually going to tell Fiona my funniest theater story.
Oh, please.
Yes.
Oh, I love a good
theater
story.
So back in 1990 or something, I was cast in a show up in the middle of nowhere in Maine. and this huge blizzard hit, and they were like, please come up before the blizzard because we're gonna be snowed in for days. And I didn't want to. That sounded so creepy to me because I was sharing an apartment with it was Tally's Folly, 2 people.
Okay. Yeah.
2-person show. So I resisted that. I was like, oh no, the snow, I'm scared to drive. I'll come up as soon as the roads are clear after. So I did. I pull up to my new housing, and we were living above a trick shop, like plastic doggy doo-doo, and a trick, like one of those old fashioned with like, it had dummies. It was the creepiest place with this big freight elevator. And I was so glad I hadn't been snowed in there for, a week. And I go up and I meet my cast person, my fellow castmate, and he's weird. And I don't usually find people weird. And I found him really, really creepy and weird. And he sort of skulked around and just made me nervous all the time. We got through the entire rehearsal period. 2 days before we opened, he vanished. Gone. I show up at rehearsal. They're like, where is his name? Can I say his name? Maybe I shouldn't say his name.
Say his first
I
name.
won't say his name, but I'll tell you the funny thing. His name is a very famous actress. He had the same name.
Oh.
So you guys can all try to figure out what this is.
Oh.
A female actress.
Okay.
It's a name that could be, it's a name that is used for men and women. Vanished. And the show was opening in 2 days, and we had to call an actor in Boston who had done the show before to come up and had 2 days to get this thing. I've never been so nervous in my entire. I practically quit theater after that because the stage fright that I felt of going up on stage with an actor who I, had barely rehearsed with. It was so terrifying.
You have dreams still of it where
Yes.
it's happening? Yeah.
Just dreams of just not knowing my lines, and no one told me that the play had been changed yesterday to a new play. Like I do. Do you?
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
At least in writing, you can write it, right? You can write it beforehand, and then it's out in the world, and there's nothing about it.
I prefer. It's a lot less terrifying. There's almost nothing as scary as opening night. Nothing.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
And my nightmare is always that it's a Shakespeare play that I haven't even read the lines for, and I'm on.
Terrible.
Yeah, you guys are absolutely wonderful. This is so much fun. I would keep this going forever, but maybe we can do one more question.
Yeah.
And then we can kind of wrap it up because I don't want to keep you guys too long. And I know our readers are anxious to get off and read your books, I'm sure. Fiona, do you have one more question?
Oh, yeah. Amy, what are you reading now?
Oh my gosh. What am I reading right now? I have 4 galleys that I'm reading.
Fun.
One is called Do Not Admit, that is about the college admissions process. That sounds like it's quite intriguing and sort of playing off of the whole college scandal that just happened.
Yeah, sure.
I just finished a book called The Nothing, which is a lot, speaking of theatrical, it's a very short, wonderful first-person narrative about this older gentleman who was a screenwriter, award winner, just a very important guy who loves to hear himself talk. And he's grappling with the fact that his wife is having an affair and he can hear it in the next room. And it's really intriguing and weird and lovely. And I read American Spy recently and absolutely loved Lauren Wilkinson's American Spy. That was just an absolute favorite. What about you? What are you reading right now? And Michelle Obama's Becoming is what I'm listening to. That's my audiobook right now. Take walks and just listen to Michelle Obama.
That's nice.
And you?
Yeah, I just finished The Vanishing Half, the Britt Bennett book that everybody's reading and has that beautiful cover. And wow, it's still sitting with me. It's still resonating. And I just finished it a few days ago, but I just can't walk away from it yet. And then there's a book that just came out this week as well called The Daughters of Foxcote Manor by Eve.
I saw that cover.
Yeah, and it is, I blurbed it. She sent it, so I got an early read on it. And it's a great book set in a crumbling English manor and kind of 3 generations of women. And the story, you can't put it down, and it's beautifully written. And I'm hoping that really breaks out for her because she's a terrific writer.
And didn't you also read Suzanne Rindell's next book?
Yes, the 2 Mrs. Carlyles. Have you read it?
I've read it. I loved it. I love all of Suzanne's books. I think she's wonderful. So Suzanne Rendell, and that's going to be out not this Tuesday, but the next Tuesday. I think.
Yeah, I think same August 4th. Yeah, and it's kind of a take on Rebecca. It's so good. Yeah,
it's fantastic.
Yeah, so that's our library.
Yes, and ladies, and of course, we want to encourage all of our readers, all of our viewers today to please, of course, buy Musical Chairs by Amy Poeppel and pre-order Lions of Fifth Avenue by Fiona Davis,
so good.
which is out August 4th. These books are amazing, and preferably, if you can, please order them from an independent bookstore. Ladies, do you have an independent bookstore that you'd like to give a shout out to? Maybe one that has your signed books?
I would say please order Fiona's book, which is so wonderful and rich and lovely and gives such an incredible glimpse into the library. It's just, and who knew that there was an apartment in there? And it's just such a spirited and intriguing read. I loved it. And you can order it at House of Books in Kent, Connecticut. I know they would absolutely appreciate the order. It's a wonderful store, and they're great.
And they can get signed copies of Musical Chairs from there as well, right?
Exactly. They can. Yes, they have signed copies.
Order both books at the same time.
Yeah.
Just saying. And Fiona, how about you? Do you have an independent bookstore that you'd like to give a shout out to?
Yeah. There's Murder by the Book in Houston has always, early on they championed my books, so I'm so appreciative, and they do have signed books available. And also the New York Public Library bookstore has signed copies available, because I'll be doing a launch event there on August 4th, Zoom, of course, with Zibby Owens of Moms Don't Have Time to Read. So that'll be a fun, and anything you buy from the New York Public Library bookshop goes to the library, which is kind of lovely. And you get a free tote bag, so hey.
Set yourself up for that partnership. That is smart. That's like a whole next level of smart right there.
It was a good fit. It was a really good fit. And yeah, I have to say, Amy's book is just, if you want something to get your mind off current day, it's a fun read. It's fabulous. It's beautifully written. I laughed out loud a couple times. There's one scene where someone enters the kitchen that made me die. And again, thank you to Jenna and A Mighty Blaze for having us. This is just such a great resource, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us. This is so great. I mean, we love to celebrate books. We, of course, all love books. Thank you to our viewers for joining us today. We had one last audience question from Dottie, who asked, Amy, I must ask, what happened to the actor that vanished? Was he ever found?
Oh, he was found. He finally called like 2 weeks later and just said sorry that he'd had sort of a nervous breakdown and had left, and that was the end of that. But boy, talk about getting stood up at the altar. I mean, that was not pretty. That was not pretty.
Well, it's experiences like that that enable you to write such wonderfully funny, heartfelt, really relatable stories like Musical Chairs. We're so thrilled for you, so thrilled for the book. Amy Poeppel, Musical Chairs, please pick it up. And Fiona, we're so excited for the Lions of Fifth Avenue. Thank you so much, ladies, for joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
On Mighty Blaze Celebrity Conversations, and we'll see you all week for our other fabulous interviews. We have many. J. Courtney Sullivan is on tomorrow with me at 4, and we have a whole lineup next week. So keep coming back, keep saying hello, and keep celebrating authors with us. Thank you, ladies, so much.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Bye.